What's up, sneaky people? It's your boy Epic Kicks and Gear, and I am back with another video. And this time we have part 2 of my series on the Travis Scott One Low olives. If you haven't seen the first video, I encourage you to watch that because there's some overlaps, but there are things that you might want to check on this pair that might be something I brought up in another video, and all of this stuff is like one stream of consciousness and it flows together. So all that to say, just be aware of all the videos that I'm putting out so that you can fill in the blanks where I don't. But yeah, we have the Travis Scott Jordan 1 Low olives, the last Travis Scott Jordan 1 Low to ever release outside of the golf pair. And just like all of the other videos that I've done, I want to make sure that I have enough material out there to help people legit checking to make sure that they're getting what they are paying for. And these are going anywhere from $650 to $900. So it's a lot of money to not get what you want. So with all that said, we are going to get into this video. I'm going to try and keep this one shorter and more concise. So with all that said, remember guys, you can always see pictures of the rep on the Instagram account here. Make sure that you pay attention to the angles because those small details that might not be focused in on in the video are still important. So with that said, we start with the boxes. I'm just going to do a very quick box comparison. You have the authentic box here on the left and the rep box here on the right. Color wise, they are exactly the same for that creamish color, with maybe actually the cream of the rep box being a little bit darker, but they do look very similar. The olive green on the box is just a slight bit darker on the authentic pair than it is on the rep as well. Looks a little bit more green on the rep on the bottom, and you can see that when you look at the Nike here. And from there we will look at the labels, and just like in the last video, the authentic pair has a little bit bolder, more bold, bigger text on it than the rep pair does. When it comes to checking box labels, guys, the absolute easiest way to spot a difference is to look at the smallest text available on there and then compare it to what a legit pair that you might have. So it doesn't have to be the same shoe, it just has to be the same type of label. So with the Jordan 1 Lows, we have this longer strip label here. Look at the made in China or the color code and compare to the box in question that you're trying to legit check. Look at the smallest text. If they are not identical, you know that you're dealing with a fake. So just as like a close-up, look at the made in China down there and then look at it on the authentic pair. You can see how much thinner and more faint the made in China is on the rep. So with all that said, let's get the boxes out of the way and we will talk about the shoes. So here we have the authentic pair, and just like every other video, we are going to look at a couple of things. Mostly the biggest tell in my opinion will always be color. We know that when it comes to legit checking, quality is not something that you can really tell unless you are dealing with a low tier, bottom of the barrel type of rep. Where reps struggle is with accuracy, not quality. And what I mean by accuracy is that they have things that are part of the features that exist outside of the range that you would expect to see on an authentic pair. For instance, with this pair specifically, there are two kinds of versions for the authentic pair. You have a version that has a swoosh like this. It is a Nubuck material, but it's a flat Nubuck. You don't see much motion or texture in it. Same thing goes on the other side. And you're going to see a version that has a lighter midsole with a very faint pattern, or a darker midsole with a pronounced pattern on the midsole. And what I mean by pattern is this texture, and you'll see the difference on the rep as well. But those are the real things that I look at. Authentic pairs are different in that regard. I talked about the swoosh, but you'll see swooshes that look like this color, but it does have that more transitionary Nubuck. That can happen on all authentic pairs, either what you're looking at here or a more transitionary version of that with a slightly darker midsole. That's all possible. So keep that in mind when we're doing this comparison. In fact, let's just get that out of the way right now so I stop confusing you guys. Look at this here. So specifically, you can see two things right off right off the bat, you've got the colors of the Nubuck that are different, and you have the color and texture of the sole that are different. You can see how more pronounced that is. There are plenty of authentic pairs that have this texture. This is not incorrect. But before we talk about the midsoles, let's talk about the reverse swooshes. Now, you can see here that clearly this on the rep is a more transitionary Nubuck. This is what you would come to expect from Travis Scott shoes. Whenever they do use Nubuck, they use this type of material. Well, you can see how much more transitionary it is than the authentic pair. Now, remember when I mentioned that there were two different kinds of Nubucks for the reverse swoosh? You can have this type of Nubuck on an authentic pair. However, the color is going to match more closely to what this looks like rather than this. So for here, you have more of a faded olive that looks very, very, very similar to what you would see on the Nubuck of the first Travis Scott Jordan 6. It's faded. It's more military green as opposed to olive green, but you'll see the color difference here, and that is your tell. Now, they aren't super different, but this is definitely almost a lighter, cooler green, and this is a warmer, darker green. But when you look at the midsoles, they are pretty close to each other, but there's nothing wrong with that midsole in my opinion. And if you guys have any more tips or corrections, please chime in. But as far as I know, this is a fine midsole because there can be two different options when it comes to the midsole color. You can have lighter or darker. This looks fine to me. And they almost look identical. So understand that those two things can be compared. There can be differences, but you have to know what can be right and what can't be right. And as of right now, the only thing making this one wrong is the color of the Nubuck itself, not the fact that it's transitionary. But when you go from the midsole, which we said was okay, to the outsole, you can see a very slight color difference. It's definitely coming in a little bit darker on the rep than it is on the authentic pair. It's a really, really minuscule difference, but it's a difference nonetheless. And let's turn to the inside, and you'll see the same thing going on with that regular swoosh. So I know I said a lot, but that's really what it is when it comes to the olives. There's not much else to hone in on. The materials are very, very similar. In fact, the Nubuck on this black pair is just a little bit softer and more textured than the authentic pair, but very, very similar. And you can even see that on the toe boxes here. And I mentioned this in the last video, but the reps seem to have a little bit more of a hairier, more softer Nubuck on the toe and the black parts than the authentic pairs do. And you can just see that by the motion on my hand. They are different. In fact, I would argue that this is the material on the reps probably a little bit better or more in line what I would see on Travis Scott's than this. This is a low texture density Nubuck, so it doesn't really have that much movement. It doesn't have as many hairs, while the rep is a little bit more high density and it has longer hairs, and that's what causes that transitionary thing. So we said a lot here talking about the Nubuck. That's the majority of the differences in my opinion when it's going to come to legit checking. So from there, let's go to just the other things that we are looking at, like for instance the shape. One thing that I've noticed about reps is the shape is just a little bit more bulky than on the authentic pair. So this is supposed to be a US woman's shoe in a size 11.5 13W, and they're both supposed to be that, but you can see that the rep just has this bulkier kind of silhouette than the authentic pair, and it's super, super prominent when you look at the back. Look how much wider and taller the rep is than the authentic pair. I don't know why they do that. I have no idea, but the sizing is so different. And maybe in a future video, I will compare this, a woman's release, to some of my other Travis Scott 1 lows, like the reverse mochas or the fragments or the phantoms, but these are size difference is night and day. and you can kind of see that in the toe box and how much wider it is on the rep pair on the right. Not so much in the toe box shape, but look at that side panel, how much thicker it is than on the authentic pair. You can just see this is just a wider shoe. But from there, let's take a look at the tongue tags. One of the things that I felt in the previous video was that the Cactus Jack tag was just thicker on the authentic pair than on the rep, and these feel a little bit, they feel a lot closer than the first pair, but still pretty thin. You can feel everything underneath. It just feels, just doesn't feel the same. Color wise, they look pretty close, but it looks like the rep pair has a the white background is just a little bit more sail or off-white, and just like with the olives on the Nubuck, it looks like the greens are slightly different as well. When it comes to the Nike Air tongues, those look identical though. But when you turn around and you look at the text, I've been looking at this second swoosh here, and those double O's, for whatever reason, they just come off looking different on reps, and they did on the last pair, and they kind of look different here too. That second swoosh right there, look how like those double O's kind of look blurry, and then on the authentic pair they're clean and crisp. So I'm going to continue to pay attention to that in new videos in other pairs, but this might be one of those things like the pointed A on the Lost and Founds that I found out when I was doing those comparison videos. So just pay attention to that. From there, we'll look at the lace colors. I'm not going to look at the black or the white laces. I'm going to look at the red and the green laces, because those are usually where you see the differences. And when you pull them up next to each other, you can see that the rep laces are just a lot darker and more vibrant than on the authentic. Without even taking them out of the bag, you can see that difference. And when you look at the olive laces, it's the same deal. The olive greens are slightly different colors as well. So I don't know why rep factories do not use the same exact laces. I feel like that would probably be the easiest thing to get right, but they're subtle, it's small, it's not like something that you'll be able to call out, but still something that I like to look at when you're doing the legit checking. From there, there's not really much to talk about. In the other video, I talked about how the white leathers were different colors, and I would say that the white leather is a slightly different color on the rep as well. It's a little bit darker, warmer of a white, while the authentic is just a bright white. So yeah, that's pretty much it when it comes to the outer perimeter of the shoe. We'll take a look at the Cactus Jack placement. Pretty good. It's a little bit higher on the rep, but the only thing that I look for legit checking purposes is making sure that this stitch right here comes in contact with the C, and it does. But another thing that's worth looking at is just with the overall bulky nature of the shoe. Look at this portion right here that they section off with a little bit of padding. Look how much thicker it is on the rep pair than it is on the authentic. This little collar here. So very subtle differences, nothing too crazy, but enough for you to be able to do legit checks. So from here, we are going to do a blacklight test, and we're going to see if we see anything come up. In past videos, we've seen not much really light up on these shoes. The sole kind of glows a little bit. You'll see some paint correction and things like that. Nothing really lights up. Not even the thread is very reactive, but we don't want to see anything really light up on the shoe. We do want to see the Cactus Jack 23 light up, and the, just little things like that on the insole, just to see what's going on. So on the rep, we are not seeing anything light up. You do see some weird stains or paint correction, I guess, on the outsole. Not out of the ordinary. Nothing lights up. Actually, just wanted to say this is the only thing that reacts on the authentic pair, and it does react on the rep too. We saw that in the last case as well. Nothing is lighting up. The 23 is reactive. So this is a very, very basic blacklight test. You can't use the blacklight to do any legit checking on these shoes, so I'll keep that one short. Outside of that, there was one major super easy tell that I saw on the insole of the authentic pair when I compared it to the last one, and I just want to see if it's the same here. So the weird thing about reps is, even if different factories are making the shoe and there are tons of different batches, they do share components like insoles. And I don't know who makes them, but someone makes them and they sell them to all these different factories. So the insoles are usually the same. So one of the things that I noticed on the insole comparison last time, let's turn these over. You got the authentic pair here on the left and the rep on the right. Is outside of the color difference, you can see that the authentic is a little bit actually more black in the background than the rep, but look at the Cactus Jack hair. It's by far the biggest and easiest difference right here. It's wiry, thin, and then here it's full and blotchy. So super easy thing to tell, and it's the same here. So the easiest way to do this legit check, honestly, is pull out the insole and then go from there. So outside of that, there's not really much else to talk about. I wanted to keep this short and sweet. This video will still probably be about 15 minutes long, but it really doesn't have to go that in depth. This is a pretty solid shoe. The reps are pretty good, but you can, as long as you have an authentic reference you have access to, you'll be able to do it easily. And if you don't have an authentic reference, pull out that insole and you know you're dealing with an authentic pair. So that's it, guys. Remember, you will be able to find all the pictures of these to zone in, hone in on all the details on the Instagram account that's popping up here. And I will see you guys in the next one. Peace.